Hey guys, so I started posting more swing trades. We got into ARM before this whole rise upwards happened. Our calls are up almost 50-60%. We're also holding on to Amazon. So Amazon is also doing pretty well. Aside from that, I was pretty sick these past few days. Just been trading in the Discord. Didn't really bother making any more like YouTube videos after hours. But I'm back. And what better time than to make a really, really nice, long YouTube video, go on some tangents, maybe go on some rants about politics, maybe talk about some other tech-related stuff. But in today's video, basically we're going to take a look at the overall market, what the next steps are, the SP500, the NASDAQ. We're going to take a look at the VIX starting to bounce a little, and all of the large tech stocks and put everything together. All right, so without further ado, let's get started with the video. All right, first and foremost, we're going to go down the list on all of the large tech stocks, starting with Apple. Apple is getting a bit of a pullback at a level of resistance, 260. We've been looking at this 260 level since the last time I made a video. We are literally just paused here. And I'm pretty bullish on Apple overall, but regardless, we are failing to cross above 260, but I do think that any of these pullbacks are good buying opportunities on Apple specifically. So, it doesn't really mean much that we're getting a red day like this. Overall, I am bullish on Apple. Microsoft. So, Microsoft, we were bullish down here. I wanted to get into some Microsoft calls. Remember, the last video, I was saying I wanted to get into some Microsoft calls and that I would regret not getting into them. Down here around 510, 512-ish area, right here. We ended up skyrocketing to 530 plus. It is what it is. All right, but regardless, basically this is still bullish. Microsoft is holding above 515, 518 level. All right, Microsoft was also one of the more slower, choppier movers. But we did have a big bounce upwards, like I expected us to have. Down at 500, I thought this would be a really good risk reward, and it was. So now, moving forward, I'm going to be taking a lot more of these swing trades. So this was one of the easiest ones that we could have taken, but we did it. So it is what it is. But regardless, pragmatically speaking, Microsoft is still bullish above 515 to 518. Anything in those areas is still going to be a good buying opportunity, in my opinion, on Microsoft. Google is trying to hold above 240, 238 level of support. This obviously does not look like the best bullish situation, right? Technically, it doesn't look like a great opportunity, right? It still looks like we can end up falling to 230 on Google. There could be a big pullback. Google, pragmatically, right? This is still a bull flag, right? But the lower level of the bull flag, let's clean this up a bit, right? This is a bull flag, right? The lower level of this bull flag goes down to the 230s. So this could still pull back down to 230, and we can still see that this is not really the best opportunity to try to go long. Long 238 support. The momentum is bearish, right? The momentum does look like it wants to fall lower, in my opinion, on Google. But that's just me. I could be wrong. In terms of a day trade, would I want to go long on this setup? Absolutely not. So if that's the case, then there's most likely a chance that it'll fall lower. Tesla looks dramatically bullish. It's still holding above 430. It's holding above 420, right? So this is definitely not a really good bullish setup, right? It looks like the Burj Khalifa, right? This is not really the most bullish setup, but buyers are stepping in to hold above support. So what does this tell you alongside Apple? Very similar sort of situations, right? But Apple, failed at 260. Tesla is basically failing at this 445 level. Both situations look like they could give pullbacks, but overall, all of these are good buying opportunities. As I was saying, Tesla would be a good buy down here. Tesla is still going to be a good buy down here in these pullbacks. Tesla and Apple tend to move together. So if both of them are pulling back, showing some weakness, giving better buying opportunities, expect bounces in both of them moving forward. And Tesla and Apple are actually two that I am looking towards getting maybe buying into a pullback. So Netflix is getting a really, really big bounce. We are now pulling back into the 38.2% fib here. Monstrous bounce. Really, really solid move to the upside. But now we're getting to 1240 resistance. But Netflix is one of the big winners. Meta is also one of the big winners. So Meta was also doing pretty well. We're getting big bounces out of Netflix, out of Meta. We're still showing some strength on Microsoft as well. Meta has room to 750. So Meta is a really good stock as well. It's showing a lot of strength. And then we got Amazon. So Amazon is also doing really well. Amazon held the 222 level really, really well. And it is now approaching 230 in my opinion. It should be testing 230 in the next couple of days. Even if we get a pullback to 225, regardless, like it should breach 230 in the next couple of days, in my opinion. And that's just my thought process. We got a big move on Amazon today, which was spectacular. And Meta, Amazon, Netflix, Microsoft, all of these setups are pretty bullish. And in my opinion, Amazon should definitely see above 230 in the coming days. Now, the chips. So NVIDIA is also one of the big winners. So NVIDIA is also really, really strong. Have to be bullish on NVIDIA. Not a time to be extremely bearish on chips at all. So NVIDIA is doing really, really well. We got almost 50-60% on ARM. We caught the longs on ARM. I was pretty bullish on ARM. ARM is also a chip manufacturer because, we had the bullish news on AMD. ARM was just sitting there primed and ready for a big bounce. This was a really nice bull flag. It looked like it was breaking out of the bull flag. It was holding above 157. All right, here, we were holding above. It broke out and it started to consolidate upwards. This was a really, really just amazing sort of consolidation. And once we closed above 158, which was a prior fib level from back here, this was like it was bound to bounce. So just so happens that alongside this technical setup, they released positive news that ARM was also creating an AI platform, and they released some positive news as well to help push the stock upwards. So ARM is doing really well. And buyers continue to step in, and it looks like it's just going to continue rallying, to be honest. ARM is a really, really good winner here. And AMD, of course, is continuing to rally also. So AMD is doing well. ARM is doing well. NVIDIA is doing well. You cannot completely be bearish on these chip stocks. And I'm going to continue to look for bullish opportunities to buy dips in NVIDIA, in ARM, in AMD. You cannot automatically just be bearish these stocks at all. So the chips are really, really strong. So with that being said, how can we really begin to look at the market as a whole? Because if the chips are bullish, the chips have a big stake in the overall momentum of the market. A lot of the large tech stocks are starting to look bullish as well. So that is definitely overall pretty bullish for the overall market. But what's interesting is that seasonality-wise, the S&P 500 tends to get a pullback into the end of October. So that should be pretty interesting. So now what's also pretty interesting on the SPX is that when we created a fib level from back here on August 28th to the lows here on September 2nd, we are at a fib extension level here. We are at the 2.618% fib extension level. And as you can see, this level just so happened to be acting perfectly as a level of resistance. This oftentimes does not really happen. But the fact that this odd fib level from an extension level is acting as a major level of resistance here is something to take into consideration. And we are really failing to break above this. So in my opinion, we should get a bit of a pullback sometime into the end of October, which all of those dips are going to be buying opportunities. Every single dip that we're getting in the next couple of weeks is a buying opportunity. and I'm a bit bearish on the SPY into the end of October, right? But every dip for the end of the year, we should be rallying into the end of the year and then rallying into Q1, in my opinion. Everything is geared up for that as well. All of the large tech stocks got a bit of a breather and are still rallying, and everything is taking turns to rally as well. So it's not the time to just be extremely bearish. You have to look at these opportunities to buy dips. And that's currently what's going on the SPX. It's currently what's going on the large tech stocks and everything as a whole. Now, this is chart of Bitcoin. If you guys remember, my last video was down here when we were trading around 112, 113. I said Bitcoin needed an explosive move to the upside, or if it did not have a really, really fast, explosive move to the upside. Someone asked, like, what would happen during this week? I said during this week, Bitcoin needs to have a monstrous move to the upside, or else it's going to chop around and fall lower. We ended up having the biggest move so far in the year in a couple of days. And it was exactly what was needed for Bitcoin to maintain its strength. Now the bulls are firmly in control, in my opinion, on Bitcoin and crypto. And the reason why we look at crypto is because this gives us a good gauge of how strong the overall market is, how strong the tech stocks are, how strong the financial sector is, and just the fact that Bitcoin did this and is now trading back above 118, 120, major levels of resistance. This is really, really good for the overall stock market because large hedge funds and banks are invested in crypto. All of them are invested in crypto. They're invested in Bitcoin and Ethereum as well as Solana. And the fact that Bitcoin did this is very, very bullish. So we have to continue to monitor Bitcoin. Bitcoin currently, this is just a normal pullback back to a level of support. This is not an automatic reason to be bearish. Yes, Bitcoin dropped from 126 to 120. Big whoop. But it bounced very aggressively. Gave us a monstrous move to the upside. This is a normal bit of a pullback that we're getting. So this is overall bullish for the overall market, in my opinion. The fact that crypto is doing this. The fact that Ethereum did this and bounced really, really aggressively. The fact that Solana did this. I had this drawn out. I didn't want to change the drawings. I had this drawn out back here. This is where Solana was trading. My last video, I said, look, we need to have an explosive move to the upside and we would hit these levels. And if we don't do that in the next coming days, we were going to drop. We ended up bouncing explosively exactly to these levels, and we did not bounce. We did not drop. So it goes to show that a lot of these banks and hedge funds are all similarly looking at dynamicism. They're looking at velocity. They're looking at strength. They're looking at momentum. And they understand how all of these things are coincided as well with human psychology and human behavior. If we have a setup that is sitting at support for a very, very long time and it doesn't bounce, that is very, very bearish, and it will incline people to continue to be bearish, and people will end up looking for lower levels of support. That's not what they ended up wanting. So with that being said, that's why they ended up bouncing it very aggressively, and we had like a 20% move in the past couple of days. So that's why, we have to continue to monitor what's going on in the crypto market. Overall, the crypto market is looking pretty strong. So the crypto market's strong. A lot of the tech stocks are strong. The SPY should be getting a bit of a pullback, but everything, in my opinion, is a dip buying opportunity on the SPY, the NASDAQ, all these large tech stocks. Last but not least, the VIX. So the VIX is trying to break above 17. It had a bit of a move above 17 earlier today. But the reason why we're looking at 17 is because $17 on the VIX is really, really important. We need to break above 17 in order to be bearish on the market. The reason for that is because if the VIX is bullish, the overall market is bearish. If the VIX can hold above 17, that means the market is going to get a pullback. Immediately right now, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. The only saving grace is that a lot of these large tech stocks are like have already bounced. So have already bounced, and some of them are starting to show some weakness. That's the only saving grace of bearishness for the market right now. Other than that, a lot of these stocks are super, super bullish, and you just have to play with the market the way that it shows you, right? So in terms of a day trade, would I want to go long? It looks pretty bearish currently, right? The VIX right now looks pretty bearish. This was not a very bullish setup. It's not a very bullish situation. It's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening, right? But I wouldn't want to be bullish on the VIX overnight here. And I wouldn't really want to be, and if we look at a daily chart, the futures just opened, right? So it's 6:01, right? Futures just opened a minute ago. This is not an amazing time to be bullish on the S&P 500. It looks a bit better to be bullish on the NASDAQ. And another thing is we have to take a look at the IWM. So the IWM is a big reason why it's not great to be bullish on the SPY. Very simply, the IWM affects the overall market. It affects the S&P 500. So the IWM clearly is not looking great, right? This is not looking great. It's failing to break above 247. Wicked back at it, and we ended up closing below 246. So this is not very, very bullish. Now, the IWM needs a really big move to the upside. Similar situation to what crypto was going on with. The IWM needs a really solid move to the upside for a continued move. Now, the reason why I also got into Amazon was because the IWM needed to get some buyers. And yesterday and today, the IWM tried to basically get some buyers. The NASDAQ lifted it up. But very simply, Amazon is affected not only by the NASDAQ, but it's also affected by the Russell 2000, by the IWM, because it shows the IWM shows economically sensitive stocks. What is Amazon? Amazon is an economically sensitive stock. People spend money based on how much money they have, based on interest rates, based on how much money they have saved up, based on their income. So if the economy is doing well, the Russell 2000 is going to be doing well, and Amazon is going to be doing well, right? So if people have more money to spend, people are going to spend it on themselves using Amazon, right? So basically, because I am realizing that the IWM really needs to hold this level of support. It really needs to hold this level of support. And if it doesn't, then it's going to really, really drop lower. I don't personally think, I could be wrong, I don't personally think that they're going to allow the market to just drop head first, right? But if that's the case, we also have some SPY puts. We also got some SPY puts. But the main thing is that I believe, purely based on the strength that we're seeing out of chips, as well as Amazon, Microsoft, Google, the large tech stocks that we saw recently as well, gold, silver. We're not even looking at gold and silver. Gold and silver are gonna rally like crazy. All right, gold and silver are gonna really, really rally very, very heavily. There's a lot more room to the upside in gold and silver. There's a lot more room to the upside on crypto. Because there's so much more upside, even if we do get a bit of a pullback, it's irrelevant. Because into the end of the year, there's going to be bullishness. So into the end of the year and into Q1, there's going to be a lot of bullishness. So that's my thought process on all of that. That's it. I guess there's not really much else to talk about. All right. So also there's news of a ceasefire between, two countries. Please, like every single time there's been a ceasefire, it's been broken. Okay, so don't expect this to be some like, oh my god, wow, ceasefire deal, blah blah. To stop. Okay, if a goal of a country is to remove the occupants, every time there's been some sort of a ceasefire conversation or anything like that, they try to kill the people that are involved, or they try to not come to the table. For example, what happened in Qatar, they tried to attack Hamas officials, right? They're not willing to speak. So this is not really something that's going to be sustainable. And another thing is, many people claim that this isn't a genocide. And what they do is they try to look at past genocides, and they say, look, at this isn't a genocide. The Rwandan genocide was way worse. So here's the thing. So we could take a look at the Rwandan genocide. And the thing with the Rwandan genocide was simply, it was in a short period of time that many, many people were killed. Just because this is over a long period of time and many people are being killed and many people are being displaced, all of their land in Gaza is destroyed. All of the buildings in Gaza are destroyed. Just because these things are taking a longer period of time does not automatically mean that this is not a genocide. It is, imagine you're Israel. You're surrounded by a bunch of Muslim countries where all of the citizens in those Muslim countries hate you. The leaders are bought out by you, right? The leaders are put in place by the United States and Israel. The citizens don't like Israel because of what is going on in Palestine. Very simple, okay? If Israel was just there and there was a two-state solution and everyone lived happily, there would be no problems. I promise you, there would be no problems. The Muslims in the Middle East would not care. Do you understand? But simply because Israel and the United States are colonizing the Middle East, the citizens in these countries don't like that fact. But the citizens are powerless because the leaders of those countries are being bought out. All right, so simple. So now you're Israel, and you're like, okay, there's 2 million people in Gaza, and there's a lot of people in the West Bank. We don't want them there. How would you manipulate everyone to be okay with what's going on? You would elongate what you're doing. Israel could have went in and destroyed everybody, but that would destroy the immediate control that they have over the people around them. You understand? Because they're elongating this process, it gives them more leeway to do what they want because it's a long, drawn-out process. If they went in and did the Rwandan genocide to these people, the entire world, it would force the countries nearby, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, it would force the leaders of those countries to really, really ramp up their influence, and they would put pressure on Israel because the citizens of those countries would take up arms and they would not be okay with what's going on. You understand? But because this is a long, drawn-out thing, and the media is manipulating people into thinking that this is not a genocide, because it's drawn out and long, it's easier to take over the land. So, it's really smart. If I was Israel, if you were Israel, right, that's exactly what you would end up needing to do. Because the main thing is, this is not a genocide. The only genocides that we know in history were very, very quick. And the most recent one was the Rwandan genocide that many people talk about. 800,000 people not killed in 100 days in Gaza. So by default, it's not a genocide. 6 million people, 6 million Jews were not killed, right? Because the Holocaust was another genocide. So it can't be the same. This is not a genocide. But by the time it becomes a genocide, it's already too late. Does that make sense? So that's essentially what they're doing. They're trying to draw it out. They have some peace deals. It's all bullcrap. This is not really going to sustain itself. And at the end of the day, this is, like, when you think about it, what does the United States, what do the citizens get? We have economically colonized South America. We've economically colonized the Middle East. We have vested interest in all of the oil that's basically in the Middle East. We've economically colonized the Far East nations as well. How the hell are we still paying for healthcare and education? And how are our roads still destroyed, basically? Like, how are our buildings and our infrastructure so far behind what's going on in China, for example, or Japan? It's because the money is going straight into the pockets of the people that are perpetrating these wars. It's not going into the citizens. They don't want the citizens to have the money. They don't want the citizens to be in control of their, like, they would rather men be docile. People in control would rather men be docile. For example, the Indian government. There's 1.4 billion Indians. There's like over a billion Indians. The last thing that a political party would want is 1.4 billion straight-edged, awesome humans. Why? Because that would cause a lack of corruption. There would be no room for corruption. There would be no room for manipulating people. There would be no room for putting money in your own pocket if you're a corrupt politician. For India, what they would rather do is they would rather have these Indian men dance and watch Bollywood music and listen to music and be in love and do all this, like, really just at the bare minimum. It's not how men traditionally have acted. For like thousands of years, men have been conquerors, right? What you do when you don't want your society to be the upper echelon of people, you provide them with baseless entertainment, you give them bad food, you give them things to waste their time on, and you try to make it so that they are not really focused on their physical fitness, their emotional fitness, their mental fitness. So that's why it's easy to manipulate and control people. The United States, same concept, bro. We are being bombarded with corn. We're being bombarded with that. Like, half of the food in our aisles are not even allowed in Europe, for example. Our cereals are banned in Europe. Food in the United States that we take every single day are banned in other countries because of how harmful they are. Why is that? It's because people understand the power of a small minority of people that take their health and their discipline and their mindset seriously. We know what happens with the 300 Spartans. 300 Spartans took on the Persian Empire, and they did very well. What were those 300 people? It was a group of people that were very disciplined, hardworking, really straight, cutthroat people. We've seen it time and time again, where a small contingent of people did very well against a larger army. That's the last thing in today's day and age. That's the last thing that any ruling party, any ruling class would want. Does that make sense? Why would you want a group of your citizens strong enough to overthrow your corruption? You wouldn't want that. You would continue to give them NBA, NFL, the circus, entertainment, movies. You would empower, like, if you just look at any movie nowadays, by default, it's made to make men look stupid. Every single movie that we look at nowadays, every single time, it's just the man is just an idiot, or the man is docile, or the man is stupid, and the woman is taking charge and taking lead. That's not how things have been for tens of thousands of years. The reason why they are subconsciously programming people to believe these things and to see these things is because they don't want men to be among those 300 Spartans. They don't want men to be strong enough to control their desires, to control their discipline, and to do what's right for society as a whole. Because it's easier to just eat your Twinkies, watch your corn, eat your ice cream, and go to sleep. Have your 9-to-5 job, not question what's going on, what the government is doing, not question what any other things are happening in the country. It's very easy when you are just like weak. So that's what's currently going on. I wouldn't trust what's going on with like the ceasefire. I'm pretty sure I would bet within the next week that Israel is going to attack. Even after the ceasefire, because that's what ends up happening. They destroyed, can you imagine, bro? They destroyed every single hospital. They destroyed every school, every UN. There were doctors, UN sent doctors, all like journalists. Everyone's just getting killed. Why is it happening? It's because the United States is the military arm of the world. What they say goes, and Israel controls basically the entire U.S. government through APAC. That's crazy. So that is something that has, it's just colonization. It just becomes a point of like conquering. That's all it is. Just modern day conquering. The conquerors create a bubble of which that you're able to comment on what's going on, right? So the United States and Israel, the people in charge, right? Because the average citizen is not gaining from this. So the politicians in charge have created a bubble that you're even able to comment on what Israel or the government is essentially doing. You're not even allowed to say that this is what's going on, right? You have to say that it's wrong, that they're taking Palestinians out of their land. It's wrong, blah, blah, blah. But what is currently going on is literally, it's just conquering land. If people were able to just say like, yo, Israel is just literally just conquering Palestinian land, it would click a switch in the neighboring population and be like, for thousands of years, our ancestors have all been in one way, shape, or form a part of a conquering class, right? Like the Europeans had the Crusaders, had multiple empires, the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, the Macedonian Empire, like tons of empires all throughout history. This is no different. But it's because like they are gaslighting you into thinking that that's not what's happening. That, oh no, this is just, we're just fighting, we just want land. Da, da, da. It's literally just conquering. And the way that a lot of these countries are conquered now is not directly through force. Well, it is through force, but it's not as blatant as it was before during the Mongolian Empire, for example. It's pretty similar to actually the Mongolian Empire, is because the Mongolians, when they would conquer land, right, they would allow the land that they conquered, they would put someone in power. They would make sure that the person in power relayed everything to the Mongolian Empire, but they would allow that land to govern itself. In other aspects of history, they would just brute force put a British person or put a white person or a black person, or they would put that ruling class in charge of that country. That's when oftentimes there would be uprising. It's much easier to not have any uprising when you put one of their own members in charge of them. That's also similar to what was going on with the Houthis and in the Rwandan genocide, because they would want a lighter class, a lighter skin in power. But that's neither here nor there. But basically right now, you have people that are being conquered. The conquering class is putting people in power that have no affinity to their own population. They are willing to take money in their own pockets. And this is something that the average citizen needs to take into consideration and really, really start to wake up to. Because this is not something that's going to be solved in one generation. It's something that can be solved in 2 or 3 generations. Kids and our kids, based off of the foundation that we leave for them, based off of the work ethic and the discipline that we have within ourselves, is going to end up permeating in 1 or 2 generations from now. That's when things can start to change. And, that's really what needs to go on. And regardless, right? Regardless of what is happening, you always need to be good to people. You always need to be good to people. Regardless of how evil someone is, you need to be good to them. You need to be just. There is no room for any injustice. Every single time in history, the ruling class, right, whether they were evil or not, eventually justice prevailed. Justice would always prevail. When, for example, the Crusaders, right? They would treat Jewish people very, very badly. No ifs, ands, or buts. The Crusaders would treat Jewish people very, very badly. Before every crusade, they would make it a point to murder. They would make it a point to attack Jewish people on the way to the Crusades in the Middle East. The Jewish people would go to the Muslim lands as a safe haven. Now, regardless, right? And then eventually, once like the Muslims took over the Middle East and everything as well, the Christians found safe haven in the Muslim lands as well. So a lot of the propaganda that you see nowadays, like, oh, wow, Christians are treated very, very badly. Christians are treated very well in Muslim countries, even today. When you go to Israel, Christians are spat on, okay? So it's a lot of it is propaganda. But my point is that when the Ottoman Empire, for example, it's a Muslim empire, right? When the Ottoman Empire began to be unjust, when they started to be unjust, that's when they lost power. When initially the Ottoman Empire began, they were just. When initially a lot of these empires began, they cared about their people. They were just. They had morals. They were morally upright. At the end of the day, it's very, very easy to have power in this world when you are not morally upright. But that's always short-lived. The Mongolians, they conquered almost the entire world, but that was short-lived. Genghis Khan's grandkids became Muslim. Almost. So imagine, like, you're conquering these people, you lose your own lineage to the people that you're conquering because it's short-lived. The atrocities that these people do are always short-lived. Do not get blindsided by how weak or how things look in the short term, because what's going on is a multi-generational battle. So take that into consideration. Think more about the future. As men, especially, think more about the future. You cannot succumb to the ill feelings of your day-to-day life. You have a future, you have a lineage, you have generations to try to influence. How you are in your day-to-day life is going to influence your kids, and it's going to influence their kids. If you don't get your shit together now, these genocides and these atrocities are going to continue. We might not be in control of being able to change anything now, but we can give the foundation of what can change in the future if we keep on the right path, if we keep God first, if we treat people with justice, and if we treat people right. So that's that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.